My husband told the doctors to save the baby instead of me during labor. I didn't know what had happened at first. One second I was gripping the bed rails and trying to breathe through another contraction, and the next I was out, like a switch flipped. I remember the monitors beeping faster, and a nurse saying something urgent to the OB, but it was already slipping away. When I woke up, everything felt wrong. My mouth was dry, my body heavy, and there was a strange quiet in the room. That unnatural hospital quiet, like the hallway was full of tension, but my room had been sealed off from it. The first thing I saw was the IV taped to my arm. Then I turned my head and saw the chair next to me. It was empty. I looked toward the bassinet, also empty. For a few seconds I thought, maybe the baby didn't make it. Maybe that's why no one was in the room with me. Or maybe I hadn't even delivered yet and I was just hallucinating. My brain wasn't catching up. Then the door opened and a nurse came in. She smiled when she saw my eyes open. It was a soft, tired kind of smile. "You're awake," she said. "That's good. Let me go get your husband." Not "let me go get the doctor" or "let me check your vitals," just my husband. That felt odd. He came in a minute later, and I could tell something was off with him right away. His face was pale, his eyes were red-rimmed, but he looked relieved to see me. "Hey," he said, and walked over to me. He leaned down and kissed my forehead, and I could feel his hand trembling a little. "You scared the hell out of me." I tried to speak, but my throat was dry and the words didn't come out right. I just croaked something like, "What happened?" He pulled the chair close and sat down. "There were complications. Your blood pressure dropped. They said it was an amniotic fluid embolism. They had to do an emergency C-section. They got the baby out just in time." "Where is she?" I asked. "She's in the NICU," he said. "She's okay. Small, but okay. They're taking good care of her." I tried to move my hand to my stomach. I already knew she was out, but I think my body didn't. It felt like something had been cut out of me, and not just physically. There was a coldness that started creeping in, from the center out. I looked at him. He looked away. "You're okay," he said again, quieter. I could tell he wasn't telling me something. I was too groggy to press, too worn out to care at that second. But the next few hours were strange. Nurses came and went. The OB came in and told me I was lucky, that I'd stabilized quickly, that most women didn't. I kept hearing that word. Lucky. Like surviving something you didn't choose to go through in the first place was good fortune. It wasn't until later, when my sister came to visit, that I heard the words. She was sitting next to me while my husband was out of the room. I don't think she meant to say it. I think she thought I already knew. "They said it got bad for a minute. Like, they weren't sure if either of you would make it. Matt had to choose." I blinked. "Choose what?" She went quiet. I saw her mouth open and close once, like she was trying to take it back, but it was too late. "He told them to save the baby," she said. "That's what they said. He told them to focus on her." I didn't say anything. I just stared at the wall behind her. I didn't know what I was feeling. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't even anger. It was like my mind hit a wall and couldn't go any further. When Matt came back, I watched him differently. Everything he did, pouring me water, asking the nurse questions, holding my hand, suddenly looked staged. Or maybe just not real in the same way. Like it wasn't about me anymore. Like I was only here because the doctors hadn't followed his instructions exactly. He must have seen something in my face, because he got quiet. That night, while I was trying to sleep, I heard him crying softly in the chair. Not big, dramatic sobs, just the kind of quiet, tired crying you don't want anyone to notice. I didn't say anything. I just stared at the ceiling. The next morning, I asked him directly. I waited until the nurse left and we were alone. I was still sore, my whole body aching, and I hadn't seen our daughter yet. But I needed to hear him say it. "Did you tell them to save the baby over me?" He didn't answer right away. He ran a hand down his face and let out a long breath. Then he nodded. "Just once." "They said it might come down to that," he said. "They told me we might lose one of you, and they needed to know what to do if it came to that." "And you told them to pick her." "She was the only one who hadn't had a life yet." I stared at him, trying to make that sentence make sense in my head. The only one who hadn't had a life yet. Like that erased mine. Like the 32 years I'd lived already made me easier to cross off. "You didn't ask me," I said. "There wasn't time." I didn't say anything for a long while. I think I stopped blinking. He tried to explain again, quieter this time. "They said it might be minutes. That if they didn't act, we might lose both of you. I thought you'd want that. For her to live." I closed my eyes. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear how sure he was that he knew what I'd want. I wanted to scream, but I didn't have the strength for that, not yet. Instead, I said, "I never told you that. You decided it." He didn't answer. He sat back in the chair and folded his arms over his chest like he was cold. Neither of us spoke again for a while. I watched the shadows on the ceiling shift as the sun moved across the sky. Somewhere in the building, our daughter was breathing through a tube and blinking at a world she hadn't chosen either. They let me see her that evening. A nurse wheeled me into the NICU. The walls were painted pale green, but everything still felt sterile, like a place that didn't pretend to be comforting. I saw her before I got close. Tiny, red-skinned, wrapped in wires and monitors. "She's strong," the nurse said. I looked at her, this little person I'd been waiting for. I didn't feel what I thought I'd feel. There was no overwhelming rush of joy, just something heavier, like I was staring at a lock without a key. Matt stood beside me, staring down into the incubator. His hand hovered above the glass, but he didn't touch it. "She looks like you," he whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't want to think about who she looked like. I didn't want her to have my nose or his eyes or anyone's legacy to carry yet. Back in my room, they gave me painkillers, and I drifted in and out of sleep. Every time I woke up, Matt was either on his phone or staring out the window. We barely spoke. The next day, my OB came in to check on me. She sat on the edge of the bed and asked how I was feeling, then paused like she was waiting for something. "We don't usually get to see the moms after these," she said. I looked at her. "I just mean, it's rare. Most amniotic embolisms don't end this way. You're incredibly lucky." There it was again. That word. Lucky. After she left, I turned to Matt. "I don't feel lucky," I said. He rubbed the back of his neck. "I know." A few days later, they said I could go home. The baby had to stay in the NICU, but I was stable enough. They use that word a lot too. Stable. Like I was a building that hadn't quite collapsed. When we walked out of the hospital together, I didn't hold his hand. I walked slowly, feeling every stitch, every tug in my belly. The car ride home was silent. He pulled into our driveway like everything was normal. Like we were just two people returning from something brief. I stared at our front door and tried to remember the last time I'd walked through it without feeling something crack in my chest. Inside, the house smelled the same. The baby's room was already done. Light purple walls, a small white crib, a mobile with clouds. I stood in the doorway and felt like a stranger in someone else's plan. He came up behind me and touched my arm. "We can change anything," he said. "Anything you want." I didn't know what I wanted. I just knew that something had split, and it wasn't just my body. Something between us had torn open, and we both knew it. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake in bed, listening to the soft hum of the refrigerator down the hall. He was asleep next to me, breathing deep, his back turned. I wanted to shake him awake and ask again, "Why didn't you choose me?" But I didn't. I just lay there, thinking of that moment I'd been unconscious. When someone had asked, and he'd answered. The first time I held her was 6 days after the birth. They let me do skin to skin, even with all the wires and sensors still attached. I sat in the stiff-backed NICU chair while a nurse carefully placed her against my chest, her tiny limbs tucked in like a bird. I barely felt her weight. She was just under 4 pounds. Matt stood behind me the whole time, quiet, watching. He didn't touch me, or her. "Can I be alone with her?" I asked the nurse. She looked at me for a second, then at him, then back at me. "Of course, just call if you need anything." After she left, Matt hesitated. I didn't look up. I just kept my hand on the baby's back, feeling the fragile rise and fall of her breathing. He left without saying anything. I sat there for 20 minutes, maybe more. I thought I'd cry. I didn't. I didn't feel numb, exactly. Just outside of myself. Like I was borrowing the moment from someone else's life. She had a faint scar on her upper lip already, where the breathing tube had irritated her skin. I traced it gently with my thumb. I tried to imagine what it would feel like to love her without question. I wanted to. I kept waiting for it to happen. The next morning, I walked into the living room and saw Matt with his laptop open on the couch. He had a spreadsheet up, something with schedules and feeding times and diaper brands. I stood in the doorway watching him type. He didn't notice me at first. When he did, he smiled like everything was normal. "I found a lactation consultant we can try. And a night nurse, if we want to do interviews next week." "I'm not ready for that," I said. He paused. "For which part?" "All of it." He shut the laptop slowly. "Okay." We sat in silence for a few moments. He rubbed his palms together like he was trying to warm them, even though it wasn't cold. Then he looked at me. "Tell me what you need." I didn't know how to answer. I wasn't sure what I needed, or what I was allowed to ask for. I kept hearing my sister's voice. He told them to save the baby. "How long did they give you to decide?" I asked him. His eyes met mine. "What?" "When they asked you who to save, how long did you think about it?" He didn't answer right away, just blinked, swallowed. Then he said, "Less than a minute." "Did you think I would have picked her over me?" He stared at the rug. "I thought I'd lose you both if I didn't say something fast." "That's not what I asked." He didn't reply. I walked to the kitchen, pretending to look for a glass. I needed space. Any kind of barrier. He stayed on the couch. I heard him pick up the laptop again, then put it back down. That night, after dinner, he brought it up again. I was folding a blanket on the armrest when he said, "You think I made the wrong call?" I didn't look at him. "I think you made it alone. She's here because of that decision." And I almost wasn't. He stood up slowly. "What would you have done if it were me on that table and you had to choose?" I didn't answer. I wasn't going to give him that. Not when he wanted to twist it around like we'd both been through the same thing. He took a few steps toward me. "You think I wanted that? You think I wasn't sick at the thought of it?" I finally looked at him. "Then why didn't you tell me, after I woke up? Why did I have to hear it from my sister?" His face changed, like something cracked under the surface. "Because I didn't know how to say it. Because I was afraid you'd never look at me the same way again." "You were right." We didn't speak after that. He slept on the couch that night. The next day, a package arrived at the door. Tiny newborn clothes from one of his coworkers. I brought the box inside but didn't open it. I left it on the kitchen counter, untouched. When I visited the baby that afternoon, the nurse mentioned they were ready to try bottle feeding. "You can try if you want," she said. "Or we can do it for now until you're more comfortable." I nodded. "I'll try." It felt strange. The way she latched. The way I had to tilt the bottle just right. Like a test I hadn't studied for. I watched her swallow. Watched the numbers on the monitor rise and fall with each breath. Later, when Matt came by, I told him I wanted time alone again. He didn't argue. He waited outside until I was done. That night, I opened the baby's closet and looked at the things we'd picked together months ago: the rocking chair, the stack of books, the swaddles. I sat down in the chair and stared at the crib. I didn't cry. I didn't touch anything. It was the first time I realized he'd been preparing for this life in a way I hadn't. And I was starting to wonder if he'd always been prepared to go on without me. 3 weeks after the birth, she came home. The hospital gave us a time window to pick her up, and Matt insisted on being the one to install the car seat. He triple-checked the straps and the angles and took a picture of it like he needed proof it was right. I sat in the back seat during the ride, next to her, even though she was asleep the whole time. I kept glancing at her face, then out the window, then back at her. It was hard to describe what I felt. Not love, not resentment either. Just a numb obligation. Like I had been assigned to care for something I hadn't agreed to bring home. Matt was quiet the whole ride, which I appreciated. I wasn't in the mood for small talk or declarations about how this was the first day of our new life. It didn't feel like a beginning. It felt like I was being dragged along behind someone else's momentum. At home, he carried her in while I followed with the hospital bag. He placed her gently in the bassinet and stood back, arms folded, watching her sleep. I stood in the doorway for a moment, just watching him. That night, she cried almost every hour. Matt got up for the first 2 times, bouncing her in the hallway and whispering to her while I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. By the third time, he was exhausted. He came into the bedroom holding her, his eyes barely open. I think she's still hungry. I didn't move. Can you try nursing again? I pushed the covers off and sat up without answering. He handed her to me, and I adjusted her against my chest. She latched after a few seconds. He sat down on the edge of the bed, watching. I could feel him studying my face like he was waiting for a cue, for some sign that things were healing between us. I didn't give him one. Do you want me to take her after? No, I said. I'll do it. After I burped her and laid her back in the bassinet, I stayed awake. I could hear Matt's breathing even out as he drifted off again. Mine didn't. A few days later, my mother came over. She held the baby, cooed at her, made comments about how beautiful she was and how much hair she had. I sat on the couch next to her, feeling like a guest in my own life. After a while, she looked over at me and said, "You've been quiet." "I'm tired," I said. She gave me a look. The kind that mothers give when they know that's not the full answer. But she didn't push it. As she was packing up to leave, she pulled me aside in the hallway. "You're doing a good job," she said. "Even if you don't feel it yet." I didn't say anything. I just nodded and opened the door for her. Later that night, after another long stretch of feeding and pacing and trying not to cry, I came back into the bedroom to find Matt looking at his phone. I climbed into bed without speaking. He put the phone down. "I talked to someone today." I looked over. "Who?" "A therapist. Just to start. I didn't book anything yet, but I wanted to try." "Good," I said. "You should." He was quiet for a second, then added, "I think we both should." I didn't answer. The following week, the pediatrician confirmed she was gaining weight steadily. Matt beamed during the appointment, nodding as if the success belonged to him. On the way home, he suggested we go out for a walk with her. I wasn't ready to be seen yet, not with the weight still clinging to my hips and face, not with the hollow feeling that made every smile feel forced. But I agreed, because it felt easier than explaining why not. We walked around the block, Matt pushing the stroller. Neighbors waved. One older woman we'd seen a few times before stopped and asked how old she was. Matt answered for both of us. I just smiled. When we got back inside, I went straight to the bathroom and locked the door. I sat on the closed toilet lid and stared at the tile for a long time. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even thinking. I just needed silence. A few minutes later, there was a soft knock. "You okay?" Matt's voice, not pushy, just checking. "I need a minute." "Okay, I'll take her." When I finally came out, he was sitting on the living room floor with her lying on a playmat beside him. He looked up at me and gave a small, careful smile. "I was thinking," he said, "maybe we should go away for a weekend when she's a little older, just us. I know it's a long way off, but..." I shook my head. "That's not what I need." "What do you need?" "I need to not pretend this didn't happen." He was silent. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were shaking and I had to steady them on the counter. He came in behind me. "I know I made the decision alone, but I thought I was doing the right thing." I turned to him. "You didn't think. You assumed. You didn't give me a chance to say what I wanted. You just handed them an answer." "She's alive," he said, like that was the conclusion to the argument. "So am I said, "and you never asked if I wanted to be." He stared at me, stunned. Then something in his expression collapsed. I walked out before he could respond. I didn't want another apology. I didn't want a hug. I just wanted space from the man who had made a life-and-death decision about my body without asking. 2 days later, I found the form buried under a stack of hospital discharge papers. It was a printed document with a hospital logo at the top, and a line at the bottom where Matt had signed his name in tight, blocky letters. Above it, in faint but legible type, was the sentence that made me sit down hard on the edge of the bed. "In the event of simultaneous maternal and fetal distress, prioritize neonatal life support measures." He hadn't just said it aloud in a panic. He'd written it down, signed it, given them a legal directive. I stared at that line for a long time, not because it was new information, but because seeing it written in ink made it feel permanent. Not a judgment call made in a moment of chaos, but a deliberate choice made with clarity. When he got home from running errands, I was still in the bedroom. I didn't call him in. I waited until he passed the door and saw me holding the form. What's that? He asked, too quickly. Then he stopped. You found it. I didn't answer. I held it up. So it wasn't a fast decision. You had time to write it down. He walked in slowly. They said it was protocol. They needed it for the emergency plan. They gave me the form while you were still in early labor. You had time, I said again. You had time, and you still didn't ask me. I thought asking would scare you, he said. You were already in pain. I didn't want to put that weight on you. You didn't want me to feel the weight of my own death? He didn't respond. I stood up. Do you even hear yourself? I was trying to protect you. No, I said, my voice sharper than I meant. You were trying to protect the version of this story where you come out the hero, the brave husband who made the hard call. But I wasn't some unconscious body you had to rescue. I was a living person you cut out of the conversation. He sat down on the edge of the bed, head in his hands. I didn't want to lose her. You almost lost me. I know. The next day, I took the baby to my sister's for a few hours. It was the first time I'd gone anywhere with her without Matt. He didn't argue, just watched as I buckled her into the car seat and stood by the door looking hollow. At my sister's, I handed her over and sat down at the kitchen table with a glass of water. She's so beautiful, my sister said. She's fine. She looked at me. You sound like you don't feel anything. I feel like I'm living someone else's life, I said. Like I'm the backup version of me. She hesitated. He's still not getting it, is he? I shook my head. He thinks that because she's alive, the rest will fix itself. That once I start sleeping more and nursing gets easier, I'll stop being angry. Will you? I don't know, I said, and it was the most honest thing I'd said in days. I keep looking at her and wondering if I'd feel closer to her if I hadn't found out he chose her over me. You think that's stopping you from bonding? I think it's stopping me from trusting him, and that makes everything harder. My sister was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You don't have to keep doing this exactly the way you planned. What do you mean? You don't owe anyone the version of motherhood you thought you'd have, especially not him. When I got home later, he was folding baby laundry at the kitchen table. He looked up when I came in but didn't say anything. I took her to errands, I said. We talked. He nodded. Okay. I saw the form. I know exactly what you signed. I didn't hide it. You didn't show it to me either. He put the folded onesie down. I can't take it back. I don't know what you want from me. I want you to stop pretending this didn't happen. I want you to admit you made a choice that changed how I see you. And I want you to understand that it's not going to go back to normal just because we both survived. He looked down at the pile of clothes, then back at me. I'm not pretending. I don't know how to be in this with you anymore. I feel like you're halfway gone all the time. Because I am. It was the first time I'd said it out loud. He flinched a little, like he hadn't expected me to be that direct. I'm still here physically, I said, but something broke open in that hospital, and I don't know how to close it again. He nodded slowly, as if he finally understood the shape of the thing we were carrying. But he didn't reach for me. He didn't try to fix it with a hug or a speech. For once, he just sat there and let it be broken. The baby was 5 weeks old when I finally told him I didn't want him in the room during my next doctor's appointment. He offered to come like it was routine, no edge, no pressure, but I saw something tighten around his eyes when I said no. It's just a checkup, I told him. I want to go alone. He nodded, but I could feel the questions piling up in his throat. He didn't ask them. At the OB's office, everything looked fine on paper. The incision was healing. My uterus was shrinking. My blood pressure was normal again. The doctor smiled and said, You're recovering really well. I nodded, but I didn't agree. Not really. My body was recovering. But the rest of me still felt scrambled, like someone had pulled all the wires out of a machine and jammed them back in the wrong order. She hesitated before ending the appointment. You've been through something traumatic. If you're not feeling okay, emotionally I mean, we can talk about that too. I almost said no, almost smiled and thanked her, and walked out with a copy of my paperwork like it was any other checkup. But something in me stopped. I sat there a little longer. Can I ask you something? I said. Of course. If a patient doesn't sign that form, the neonatal priority one, what happens? She adjusted her seat. Then we follow standard medical ethics. We do what we believe gives both patients the best chance of survival. So there's always a chance both can make it. In some cases, yes, not always, but we never automatically sacrifice one for the other unless there's clear direction. Would you ever want your partner to sign one without asking you? She shook her head gently. Not unless I had already told them what I wanted. I left the office feeling heavier than when I went in, not angry, not shocked, just full of something that had nowhere to go. That night, Matt tried again. We were sitting on opposite ends of the couch, the baby asleep in the next room. He held a mug of tea, untouched. I made an appointment, he said. For what? Therapy, next Thursday. With someone real this time, not just reading articles or filling out questionnaires. I nodded. I want to understand, he said. Not just what happened. I want to understand what it did to you. I looked at him for a long moment. It made me realize I was dispensable to you. His face broke a little, like he'd been punched low in the stomach. I didn't think that. You didn't have to. You just had to sign your name. He stared into the tea. Would you have signed it the other way? I don't know, I said. But I would have asked you. The conversation ended there. He didn't push. I think part of him finally understood that pushing me toward forgiveness wouldn't bring us back. It might push us further apart. The emotional fallout came in strange waves. Some mornings I could make her bottle, fold laundry, rock her to sleep, and feel fine. Not happy, but capable. Other days I'd stare at her crib for 10 minutes before walking away. I started sleeping in the guest room some nights. Matt didn't ask why. One night, around 2 a.m., I heard her crying and found Matt already in her room, rocking her. She calmed down faster with him, something I didn't say out loud, but noticed every time. When I leaned in to take her, he looked up at me, unsure. I can keep her, he said, if you're not feeling up to it. I should do it, I said. I need to try. He handed her to me slowly, carefully. I held her, and she looked up with this dazed, searching expression babies get when they're too tired to fuss but not tired enough to sleep. Her face was so small and soft and new. I started whispering to her. Nothing important, just sounds. She closed her eyes again. When I turned, I saw Matt still standing there in the doorway. He looked like he wanted to say something. Maybe apologize again, maybe explain. I shook my head gently, and he got the message. He went back to bed without a word. That week, I started journaling. Not for clarity, not to sort anything out. Just to have a place where I could write things like, I feel like I died and woke up in someone else's body. I don't trust my husband to make decisions about me anymore. I love the baby, I think. But I'm scared of what she represents. I didn't show it to anyone. A few days later, we got a card in the mail from a friend who hadn't seen us since the baby was born. It said, so happy for you both. You must be closer than ever now. What a miracle. I laughed when I read it. Not because it was funny, because it was so far from the truth that I couldn't even be angry. Closer than ever. People didn't want to hear the version where the miracle came with a price. I left the card on the kitchen table and walked into the nursery. The baby was asleep again, her chest rising and falling with tiny, perfect rhythm. I sat down in the rocker beside her and waited for something to click. For some wave of love or clarity to wash over me. It didn't come. Just the same hollow quiet. And the weight of everything he'd taken from me without even meaning to. I didn't tell anyone about the night I took the baby and drove to my sister's without warning. Not even Matt. I left him a note on the kitchen table. She's fine. I just need some space. It was just after midnight. She was 6 weeks old. I packed a bag in the dark, moved slowly through the hallway, strapped her into the car seat like it was any other errand. She didn't even cry on the way over. I think I cried more than she did. My sister answered the door in sweatpants and a hoodie, hair pulled up, eyes wide. I didn't say much. Just, I can't do this right now. Can we stay here? She opened the door wider and nodded. We ended up staying for 3 nights. I kept my phone on silent the whole time. I saw Matt's calls and texts come in, dozens of them, all spaced out like he was trying to give me room while still proving he was worried. By the second night, I knew someone had told him where I was. My mom sent me a simple message. He's trying. But I get it. I didn't respond. That weekend, I sat on the edge of the bed in the guest room while my sister folded laundry next to me. The baby was asleep in a bassinet we'd dragged upstairs. I had barely left the room except to use the bathroom. He's been calling me too, she said. I looked at her. What did you say? That you were safe. That's all. I didn't promise anything else. I nodded. I felt tired. Beyond tired. Like I had burned through something essential and couldn't get it back. I think I want to separate, I said. She stopped folding. Like, for real? Yeah. For how long? I don't know. I just know I can't live in that house and pretend we're okay. She was quiet for a moment. Are you sure you're ready for that? No, I said. But I'm sure I'm not ready to keep lying to him. When I finally called him, it was Sunday afternoon. I waited until the baby had fallen asleep again. He picked up on the first ring. Hi, I said. Hi, he said quickly. God, I'm glad you called. I was starting to. I didn't know if. Are you okay? We're fine, she's fine. I didn't know where you were until your sister told me. I thought maybe you'd left for good. I don't know what I'm doing yet. There was a long pause. I miss you, he said. I let that sit in the air. I need space, I said. And I think we need to separate for a while. Another pause. But he didn't interrupt. He didn't argue. I'll do whatever you need, he said. I need to not feel like I owe you my life. I never wanted that. But you took it anyway, I said. You took that power, and I can't unfeel what that did to me. After we hung up, I sat on the floor next to the bassinet and watched the baby sleep. My heart didn't feel broken. It felt heavy, but not broken. That Monday, I went to a lawyer, not to file for divorce, just to ask questions. She was kind. She asked if I was in any danger. I said no, that it wasn't like that. He didn't hurt me, I said. He just decided I could be gone. She nodded like she'd heard some version of this before. I also called a therapist, someone my OB had recommended. The earliest appointment was in 10 days. I took it anyway. By the end of the week, Matt had moved into a friend's place. He texted me the new address, said he'd left the spare key under the planter. I came home one afternoon while the baby was still napping and stood in the middle of the living room. Everything looked the same, but the silence felt different. Cleaner, lighter. I checked the fridge, the counters, the nursery. He hadn't taken much, just clothes, his laptop, a few books. His toothbrush was gone from the holder. I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief either, just a kind of stillness I hadn't had since the hospital. That night, my mom came over. She sat on the couch with me while I fed the baby. Do you think this is temporary? She asked. I don't know. I was angry when I found out what he did, she said. Even if he thought he was doing the right thing. He didn't ask, I said. She nodded. He didn't ask. I told her about the form, the signature, the way it wasn't a split-second decision. She looked down and exhaled hard. You deserved more than that, she said. I didn't answer. I just looked at the baby in my arms, at the tiny jaw working back and forth, pulling milk in steady rhythm. That was the night I said it out loud, just once, just to my mom. I don't know if I can forgive him. You don't have to, she said. Not now. Maybe not ever. I went to sleep alone that night for the first time in our house. No sounds from the couch, no doors creaking open, no low voice asking if I was okay. Just the baby in the next room. And me, wide awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to decide what kind of life I wanted from here. The therapist's office was on the second floor of a brick building with no elevator. I carried the baby in her car seat up the stairs, panting a little, hoping she'd sleep through the appointment. The receptionist smiled at me like I was doing something brave. I didn't feel brave, I felt exposed. Her name was Dr. Lara. Mid-40s, soft voice, didn't overnod the way some people do. She let me settle the baby next to the couch before asking me anything. I read the intake form, she said. But I'd rather hear it from you. What brought you in? I didn't know where to start. I wasn't sure I could even describe it without sounding dramatic or ungrateful. I looked at the baby, then back at Dr. Lara. I almost died, I said. And my husband told the doctors to save the baby instead of me. Her face didn't change much. She nodded, just once. And I found out after the fact, I continued. He didn't tell me right away. I heard it from someone else. She let the silence stretch. I keep thinking I should feel lucky to be alive, I said. But I don't. I feel betrayed, like I was written off. Like your voice was removed from your own survival. Exactly. I told her everything. The form, the cold hospital room, the way I couldn't hold the baby without thinking about what it cost. I told her about the numbness, about sleeping in the guest room, about the night I left with no plan except not being in that house anymore. When I finished, she said, "You're grieving." Grieving what? I asked. I didn't die. You're grieving trust, safety, maybe the version of your life you thought you had. That's real loss. That stayed with me after I left. Not just that I was grieving, but that the grief had a name. I hadn't known what to call it. I just knew I was living inside something I didn't ask for. Later that week, Matt asked if he could come by to drop off some things. I said yes, but only for a few minutes. He showed up with a paper bag and a folder. The bag had diapers, wipes, a few things he'd noticed were running low. The folder was labeled financials. It was neatly organized. He'd been making notes on budgeting in case the separation became permanent. I just wanted you to have everything, he said, not making eye contact, so you're not stuck. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not thinner, just shrunk, like life had squeezed something out of him. Thank you, I said. I didn't invite him in. Before he left, he asked, "Can I see her?" I hesitated, then opened the door wider. He walked in and stood over the bassinet, watching her sleep. "She looks different," he said. "Older. It's only been 10 days. He nodded, but didn't say anything more. After he left, I sat on the floor next to the bassinet and stared at the ceiling. My body still hurt sometimes. Scar tissue, tightness, but it was deeper than that, the kind of ache that doesn't show up on scans. In therapy the following week, Dr. Lara asked what I pictured when I thought about going back. I don't picture going back, I said. I picture staying away. Why? Because I don't want to wake up next to someone who would choose differently than I would. Would you have chosen differently? I don't know. But I would have wanted to look him in the eye and talk about it, even for 30 seconds, even if it scared him. She didn't tell me I was right or wrong. She just nodded again, like she was keeping space open for the answer to change. But not today. My sister offered to watch the baby one night so I could be alone. I went for a walk. It was cold, but not freezing. I walked until my legs hurt. Past the shops, the library, the old high school I never think about. I didn't have headphones in. I wanted to hear the world. I wanted to know I was still in it. Somewhere on the way back, I realized I hadn't thought about Matt for a full hour. Not in anger, not in longing, not at all. That night, I lay in bed and wrote in my journal. Maybe the worst part isn't that he made a choice. Maybe it's that I understand why, and that understanding makes it harder to hate him, but it doesn't make it easier to stay. The baby stirred around 3 a.m. I got up, half asleep, and picked her up from the crib. She smelled like milk and laundry. I rocked her quietly, her breath soft against my collarbone. I didn't feel resentment in that moment, not even sadness. Just a quiet kind of ownership. She was mine. I had survived. But I was starting to realize that maybe surviving doesn't always mean going back to the life you had before. I met Matt at a coffee shop 2 weeks later, on a Saturday morning that smelled like damp, pavement and burnt espresso. We hadn't seen each other since he'd dropped off the folder. He got there before me. He always did, and chose a booth in the back where it was quieter. He stood up when he saw me walk in, out of instinct, like things hadn't changed. I didn't hug him. We sat across from each other and didn't say much for the first few minutes. I ordered a tea. He had coffee, mostly untouched. He looked tired, not dramatically different, just thinner around the edges. "I wasn't sure if you'd actually come," he said. "I wasn't sure either." He nodded like that made sense. "I talked to a lawyer," I said. He looked up quickly. "Okay. I'm not filing yet, but I wanted to know what I was dealing with, what custody would look like, how finances would work." He didn't speak, just nodded again. I watched him swallow. "I'm not doing this out of anger," I said, "but I can't go back to pretending. I've spent almost 2 months now thinking maybe I was wrong to feel what I feel. Like I should be grateful just to be alive, and maybe eventually I'd snap out of it." He finally spoke. "I never wanted you to feel like that." "But you did," I said. "And whether you meant to or not, doesn't change that I've been living in a house that doesn't feel safe." I didn't mean unsafe, he said quickly. You know that. I never hurt you. You made a decision without me, I said. And then you kept it from me. And it changed the way I see you. I don't hate you, Matt, but I don't trust you anymore. And I don't know if I ever will. He looked down at the table, his hands flat on either side of the coffee cup. I thought if we got through the worst part, we'd find our way back. I don't think we're supposed to, I said. We sat in silence again, the kind that doesn't wait to be filled. I see her in pictures, he said after a while. The ones your sister posts. She's getting bigger. She is. She has your mouth. I didn't say anything. I think about that night every day, he said. I replay it, wonder if I should have frozen instead, waited. Maybe they would have saved you both anyway. But you didn't freeze, I said. You gave them permission to let me go. He nodded slowly. I'll regret that the rest of my life. I believe you. The moment felt quiet and clear. There was no yelling, no dramatics, no tears. Just the slow, final unfolding of something that had already ended. I took a folded paper from my bag and placed it on the table. What's this? He asked. My formal separation request. Nothing legal yet, but I need it in writing for daycare, insurance, all of that. He took it, didn't open it. Okay, he said. Do you want me to move farther away? I've been staying at Nolan's, but I can look for something out of town if that's easier. No, I said. You should be close. She'll need you. I'm not keeping you from her. He looked surprised. I'm angry, Matt, but not cruel. She deserves both of us, even if we're not together. He blinked a few times. I could see it hit him. Not the decision itself, he already knew, but the finality of it. The part where he wasn't going to get a second chance to rewrite the story. After we left, I stood outside on the sidewalk and watched him walk toward his car. He looked back once, but I didn't wave. I just turned the other way and started walking home. That evening, I fed the baby in the kitchen while a soft rain tapped against the windows. She was quiet, sleepy. After I laid her down, I went into the bedroom and opened the closet. I pulled out a box I hadn't touched since we came home from the hospital, stuff people had given us. Cards, tiny shoes, ultrasound pictures. I picked through it slowly, then threw away most of the cards. I kept the ultrasounds. Not because they meant anything to me now, but because someday, she might want to see them. Later that night, I wrote another journal entry. He didn't break me. He made a decision I can't live with. I'm allowed to leave because of that. This isn't about punishment. This is about choosing myself, fully, finally, without apology. Then I closed the book. I didn't need to write the rest. The first time I dropped her off at Matt's for the weekend, she was just past 3 months old. It was cold, late January. I bundled her in a soft zip-up onesie with bare ears on the hood and packed more than she needed. Diapers, wipes, formula, 2 backup outfits, a noise machine, her swaddle, and a blanket that smelled like my house. He met me in the driveway. His new apartment was a ground-floor unit in a quiet complex 10 minutes from mine. When he opened the car door and reached for her, he looked nervous, not overwhelmed, but aware, like he knew I was watching every move. You okay? He asked softly. I'm fine. She was half asleep in her car seat, one tiny fist balled up near her cheek. I'll text you when we're settled, he said. Okay. I stood there for another second, then kissed the top of her head. See you Sunday. I drove away without looking back. That night, I cleaned out the last of his things from the hallway closet, an old coat, a pair of sneakers, a box of tech cables. I didn't throw anything away, I just moved it all to the garage. I needed the space to feel fully mine. On Saturday, I woke up to a quiet apartment. No crying, no feeding alarms, no early morning shuffle of blankets. I lay in bed for 20 minutes before I realized I didn't know what to do with the silence. I made breakfast. I went for a walk. I texted my sister and said, it feels weird to breathe without a monitor in my ear. She wrote back, that's normal. You're allowed to miss her and still be relieved she's not there for a minute. On Sunday evening, Matt brought her back just before sunset. He looked tired but calm. He handed her over carefully, like she was something fragile but familiar. She slept most of the night, he said. Only woke up once. I nodded. That's good. She likes the ceiling fan in my living room, just stares at it like it's the most fascinating thing in the world. She does that here too. We didn't say much more. He lingered for a few seconds, then said, thanks for trusting me with her. I don't think trust is the right word yet, I said. He nodded slowly. Okay. That week, I updated my living will. I put it in writing that in the event of a life-threatening complication, all decisions about my medical care should come from my sister. Not Matt. Not even if we were ever on speaking terms again. It felt cold, but necessary. I also started taking photos again. Just small things. The baby in the window light, the steam off my tea, her foot curled in sleep. I didn't post them. I wasn't documenting. I was just trying to see clearly again. In therapy, Dr. Lara asked me if I felt like I was healing. I feel like I stopped waiting, I said. For what? For it to go back to before. For someone to say sorry in the right way. Or for me to stop feeling what I feel. I think I stopped needing it to make sense. Is that helping? I think so. In early March, the 3 of us met at the park. It was Matt's suggestion, neutral ground. She was more alert by then, smiling more, tracking people with her eyes. We sat on a bench while she napped in the stroller. I've been thinking about what you said, he told me. That you didn't hate me, but you couldn't trust me. I don't know if I've earned trust back. But I want to be someone she can trust, even if it's not with you. That's all you can do, I said. I still replay it sometimes, that night. I wonder what I should have done. I don't anymore, I said. He looked at me. You don't? No. It happened. It's part of her story now. Part of mine. It'll always be there. But it doesn't get to own me anymore. He didn't argue. He just nodded. Before we left, he crouched in front of the stroller and touched her foot gently. She opened her eyes, blinked at him, then yawned. Hi, Bug, he said. You're getting big. I watched from a step away. There was no bitterness in me right then. Just the quiet understanding that this was our shape now, split, but whole in our own ways. That night, after I put her down, I sat on the couch and scrolled through the photos I'd taken over the last month. I stopped at one where she was looking directly at the camera, mouth slightly open, fingers curled like she was holding something invisible. I stared at it for a long time, then set the phone down. This was the life I'd ended up with, not the one I planned, not the one I imagined, but it was mine now, and I'd chosen it, every part of it.